anytime we've ever bought it, we always think, oh, I should have bought it. Everyone has that same mindset, and we're still only at 1% adoption. So people have to get over that idea that they're too late to it. So they have to stop ignoring it. All they remember was Bitcoin crashed. I think it's stuck in people's minds what happened with FTX. That exchange was in trouble. Bitcoin's never been in trouble. But if you think about that, they promoted the heck out of that. So everybody thinks FTX, Bitcoin, bad, scary, So it's like people don't even really realize that the price has surpassed its previous all-time highs. I really feel like the 2020 cycle was cut short, it was attacked. And I do think that because the people that attacked it or cut it short or manipulated markets in order to kind of bring this economic shift to kind of slow things down until they were involved. Now they are involved. So now things can let it rip, like high risk, high reward, but you could also lose it all. I don't gamble. I just hold Bitcoin. I'm not going to mess around with that stuff. I feel like we're just at the very beginning of something monumental.
You proposed something interesting to talk about GameStop. I saw the picture from Michael Saylor and how's the guy called? Ryan Cohen or something like that?
Yeah.
Which was like, when GameStop first came onto the scene, I was like, they have to now utilize that capital and buy as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. It would be an amazing strategy if they would have done it. Do you kind of predict that this will happen now?
Well, yeah, especially after seeing that post, that was really exciting. It's just something kind of we've all had in the back of our heads, like they should do it. It's just a perfect fit. Michael Saylor says how he got into it when he was at the point in his life where he was ready to retire or try Bitcoin, because he really didn't have many options left for his company. And people have looked at GameStop for so long trying to short the stock, thinking it's, on its way out. And, this is the perfect opportunity to do what MicroStrategy did, to bring, that life back to the company and preserve its cash and not let it, just get run out. It'll be really interesting. It's a really good play for them. But living through that, I was just thinking about it when I told you that I would like to talk about it because I don't know if you remember. Did you ever see that movie that they made about GameStop?
No, actually, I didn't.
It was a pretty interesting movie, but it was like we lived through that. We lived through, the last bull run. We lived through Bitcoin hitting its all-time high, and around that same time was when this GameStop stuff was playing out. And I remember seeing it all and hearing about it, but I was in Bitcoin. I wasn't worried about GameStop. I just thought it was funny because they were showing, the majority of the people. They were showing people how Wall Street works and how they're actually, turning the game around on them. So it was really fun to see and just to see what kind of, scammers kind of there are on Wall Street and just exposing that.
Is that the Dumb Money movie?
Yes.
Interesting. They're diamond hands and the GameStop rise.
Yeah, that's kind of like that whole thing when we were when I first got into it, I was in 2020 and I started seeing the whole diamond hands, hodl thing. But it was a lot of this talk was from Reddit people and, GameStop made chaos that was going on at the time and all the shorting of the stock that was happening and billionaires losing money. It was actually really fun to see that they really did a good job with the movie. But seeing this happening now with Michael Saylor and the CEO of GameStop meeting is just, it feels like we're going to be living through part 2 of that movie. They're just going to be like, now it's not just GameStop, and that roaring kitty hyping people up and shorting the stock and, making billionaires lose a lot of money on shorting it. But what it is it's going to be with Bitcoin. So it's going to be interesting. If they put their reserves into Bitcoin and there's people still trying to short the stock, they're really going to get a rude awakening. So I just think it's going to be interesting. We're going to be living through that.
It's also interesting when you think about that narrative that GameStop is kind of against the big traditional financial elite. That narrative, I think, could resonate a lot with Bitcoiners. Mm-hmm. And if they get a nice story around the stock, I think there are many wealthy Bitcoiners who just buy the stock just because to be part of that part 2 of the GameStop story.
True. Yeah. It's almost like how people that are, when they understand that a company is, like MicroStrategy. There's a lot of Bitcoiners they love MicroStrategy. I love MicroStrategy. I think Seyr is a huge advocate for Bitcoin, and I think what he's doing is bringing Bitcoin to Wall Street and mainstream and institutions. And I think what he's doing is a huge part of bringing it to mainstream adoption. But people like MicroStrategy for that reason. So I feel they would do the same with GameStop. They would embrace it fully because it's then a Bitcoin company, you know? So it wouldn't just be game. We'd be rooting for it to come up with new ideas and stick around for the long haul. So
Absolutely, that would be really cool. And Sailor talked about that on my podcast actually, where he talked about if you want to make your company immortal, adopt the Bitcoin and buy as many Bitcoin as you want, because that could actually prolong and extend your life. Because GameStop, the core business model is kind of running out. If they find a way of making the brand cool again and make like hangout places with those GameStop things, that could be a major hit. Like they could just be from that one lucky instance of like someone picking GameStop up in the stock, making that narrative, could make a lot of wealth around that, and a lot of a great narrative also for the Bitcoin community. It could be exciting. Let's see what Ryan is up to.
yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because people will get into it not knowing that they're getting into a company that's getting involved with Bitcoin, but they just want to get in on the hype. And they just, people that don't know about Bitcoin will just get in on it for that reason. And they'll be doing well because of it, because Bitcoin does help your company preserve its life, its longevity. You won't go extinct. So, and I heard some interesting things too. Something my husband told me was that they're going to be getting into something, I forgot what it's called, something about trading cards or, basketball cards, people that collect that stuff. They're going to be doing something now where they grade the cards. Like they're getting into that type of thing. So there's like different things they'll probably come out with that we have no idea that GameStop would even care about or do. So who knows what could happen.
Absolutely, and especially if you have a whole internet culture around it, and people are rooting for you, they come up with ideas and support you while you're executing it. That could bring a stock in the company in its own life and completely convert the business model to something really great. But it's definitely interesting what was kind of happening this year. What do you make out of this year so far? You told me you're already some years in the space and you have been around the block. What are you making of this year?
I just feel like we're just at the very beginning of something monumental. I think that since I began this journey, again, I've been through COVID. I started with COVID for the most part. But I learned a lot about monetary policy and Fed tightening and all those, types of policies that the Fed is involved with. So I feel like it's time now that we've had it hard enough last couple of years of high interest rates and tightening policy that now we're in this zone where it is going to change because it's just time for it. And not to mention also, with President Trump now being pro crypto and all these, lowering interest rates, and the economy is about to shift, for many different reasons. But I think the Fed has a lot to do with that. And it's just time. It's like it's been, a long time coming, but I think it's we've had enough pain to start to turn things around and, see this huge shift that's about to happen. But I tweeted the other day, I like to look at charts. I don't trade Bitcoin, but I love to just study every day for the last couple of years. I'm just watching and just trying to predict, which is impossible. But in a way, you can kind of see what the market's doing. And I thought the last few days were interesting watching the Bitcoin price because it just looked spooky to me. It's like seeing it at a standstill. Like it looked like it was like the low points in the price were just the last 5 days or so, or even 6. I think there was one bigger candle day, but it was a huge chunk, almost a week worth of time where the price was just bottoming out at the same zone. And it was just weird to me. I thought that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That means that there's just not enough selling pressure to bring it lower. And I just think that it's a calm before the storm. So it's just really interesting how still retail, like regular people aren't in the space too much yet. You don't hear about it. I think that in 2020, a lot of people were starting to talk about it and institutions weren't yet involved. But this is a whole different thing that's happening now because the retail knows nothing about it yet. They don't even realize that all they remember was Bitcoin crashed. I think it's stuck in people's minds what happened with FTX. And I think that's on purpose. I think they wanted to promote FTX and all the fear and all the scary things that happened when that exchange went down. So, and then in my line of work, I'm a hairdresser. I work at, my small business. And when I talk to people about Bitcoin, they just think, oh yeah, that's that FTX, that's Bitcoin. They just associate it with they think that's what Bitcoin is, and Bitcoin was in trouble. I'm like, no, that's totally not the same thing. That's just like how you have a stock market, you have an exchange. That exchange was in trouble. Bitcoin's never been in trouble. But if you think about that, they promoted the heck out of that. So everybody thinks FTX, Bitcoin, bad, scary, So it's like people don't even really realize that the price has surpassed its previous all-time highs. Nobody's paying attention. And I think this time around, it's because the institutions are involved, Wall Street's involved. Nation states are getting in, buying Bitcoin and adding it to their treasury reserve. And it's like if it's talked about too much amongst regular people, then the price would get away from them before they had enough time to accumulate what they wanted. So I think it's on purpose that it's not being talked about. It's this weird, quiet time right now. Like, it was actually the first year, surprisingly for me, when I watched the Super Bowl since I learned about Bitcoin. Every year since I learned about Bitcoin, I thought when the Super Bowl came around, I thought, oh, how many Bitcoin commercials are there going to be? I wonder. This was the first year that I didn't expect any, and I didn't see any. I really didn't even have the thought in my head that I would see any. And that's just kind of funny because I think I know in the back of my mind that they're not trying to promote it. The people that want to be the wealthiest and hold the most, power in the world, or the companies that want to do the best and survive. I think that they don't want to let everyone know that this is what you should do. So I just think it's like eerily quiet right now because everyone's just trying to it's almost like they're walking in a minefield. It's like in my mind, I just think like everyone's trying to collect slow enough where they can, collect Bitcoin, but also they're shorting at the same time. I think a lot of the selling pressure now is not real. I think people that are bears are really bulls and they're just trying to short markets to collect more. So I just think it's like this little game that they're playing to collect. And that's what it seems like. It just seems like this weird, everyone's being tactical or strategic, if you will, about how they're accumulating.
It's super interesting. There was a lot in there. The thing was with the Super Bowl, I think, was mostly on Bitcoin and crypto focused. I think 2022 was the year where FTX had a huge ad in there, and I think FTX was not even. Yeah,
Coinbase had the QR code.
Oh yeah, they had the QR code that was bouncing around, and then the site was, I think, down for some minutes because they couldn't handle the load. I remember something like that. So that's super interesting. But yeah, this year was I didn't even this year the Super Bowl was weird. I think one day later I was like, oh, the Super Bowl was I think now it was last Sunday, and now it's already Tuesday evening. So I was like, oh, the Super Bowl was. Yeah. But maybe that's because I'm not American. Yeah. And it's also also interesting this 100K. I showed it before. I can show it again because that price chart is super interesting for me. Before we even hit the 100K till now, it's basically in the same range of going from 93K to 105 or something like that. So it's always in that same range, as you say, the calm before the storm. And in the past few days and weeks, it's very, very, very stable. And for me, it was a big surprise that 100K was not a big catalyst. It was basically just briefly in all the news articles of like, oh, like Bitcoin hit 100K because of Donald Trump. That's the sole reason why Bitcoin hits 100K, and that's it. And there was nothing else. And it was really interesting to see that also nobody really cared in the normal world. Like we celebrated, Bitcoin has celebrated. There were 100K parties all over the place, but normies didn't care at all that Bitcoin hit 100K. And then I was like, you probably know Bitcoin since like 5K and you don't care about it that it's hit 100K. Like you're paying no attention at all.
And I think the people that don't care, even if they do hear about it, they're like, all they think is, oh, well, I missed out. Not realizing that we're just only at the 1% of global adoption and we have a long way to go. Like this is not, but all people think is it's 100K. I should have bought it when it was this, but that's what everyone thinks. Again, anytime we've ever bought it, we always think, oh, I should have bought it. Everyone has that same mindset and we're still only at 1% adoption. So people have to get over that idea that they're too late to it. So they have to stop ignoring it. It's something that will continue to go up. It's not at a peak right now. And I have people who know that I've been in Bitcoin for a few years and I've learned to engage less with the people that are, I would say toxic because, there's some people that have such a big ego that you'll just never really, like they won't get it until something clicks for them one day. I don't know what it will be, but I had a client come into the salon and he's like, oh, you're still holding Bitcoin? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you should take a put or like buy a put. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, why would I do that? He goes, you got to protect your downside in case Bitcoin hits 60K again. Because that was when it hit 100K. And he's like, you got to protect your downside. I'm like, and there's no risk when you do this, right? I knew I wasn't going to do it, but I just wanted to, just see what his response was. And he's like, oh yeah, whatever money you put in it, he's like, you just lose that money if it goes up instead. I'm like, so you're just gambling now at this point, and I don't gamble. I'm like, I just hold Bitcoin. I'm like, I'm not going to mess around with that stuff. And people think they're so smart that it'll just drop. They think this is some kind of peak, and it's not. It's not a peak. It's just right now. It's just crazy how we see it, and we know that hitting 100K for us would have been into that price discovery, that area where it just keeps going. But that's why I think because of all this money that's in the space right now, I feel like they're playing like this little tiptoe, walking through a minefield. Like they're trying to collect as much as they can while also shorting it, to make money shorting it while they keep collecting. So I feel like it's just kind of like this, and at one point it's going to just catch so many people off sides and it's going to take off and people will have to stop playing these little games because it's just like, eventually it's going to happen. It's going to just keep going and catch people. So
absolutely. And just for the few people that might not know, call and put options are basically like you can buy options on that expire on one date, and you can get exposure to downside of a stock and upside to a stock. I will not think we don't need to go into details, but like call options is like if you bet on the upside and you can get some leverage on that, and put options is if you bet on the downside, and that's how you can make money even if something goes down without selling it, which is an interesting play if you are very long term in Bitcoin or on a stock or something like that. But in the end of the day, it's speculation. And I was investigating those strategies a little bit when I was, let's say, a stock boy before Bitcoin. And even back then, being fully immersed in the fiat system, I didn't really like it and I never used it. But it is something worth investigating a little bit, but I would never put my money in there. It's just something I think like general knowledge you should have an idea about, but you don't need to engage with it, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think those are just like the high risk, type trades, like high risk, high reward, but you could also lose it all. So it's like, I don't play around with that.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's super interesting how the general population looks at Bitcoin. I've experienced that as the people closer to me are more invested and highly engaged in Bitcoin, and the further down it goes, the more crazy the Bitcoin theories get. When I then meet them at like a Christmas table or something like that, or like Easter is coming up. And this time I heard a lot of like, oh, like it reached the top now. It will go down only now, because like if something reaches that high, it only can go down, of course. And then like it uses too much energy. It's inefficient. Something better will come along. Like all those things I hear, and I'm like just listening, and I'm like, okay, perfect. Why? And then I don't even discuss. I just want to understand their standpoint. And usually what happens is after two questions, they all of a sudden are like, oh shit, like I'm running out of arguments. And then they start asking Bitcoin questions. It's
That's
really interesting.
smart.
That's a really interesting strategy if you want to encounter someone that has some arguments against Bitcoin. Just be very curious of like why, and ask, because you will encounter at some point a knowledge gap. And then they usually either go full rage
I love this.
or if they are intelligent and open-minded, and like luckily most of them in my family actually are, they ask questions like, oh, like, okay, why is that with Bitcoin? Or how does this work actually with Bitcoin? And then you all of a sudden you're like, talking about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin works. And then they're getting a little bit orange pilled, and you started with a negative tone and you ended with a positive tone. So
That's amazing. That's genius. You should like share that. I'm going to share that. If you don't share it, I will.
You can share it. I didn't share it actually a lot, but it's always my strategy. I even before Bitcoin, when I encountered someone that was disagreeing with something that I did, I was like, okay, the best case I can do is figuring out why and how he thinks like that, because there's either two things happening. The one thing is happening, I let him discover that he has not enough arguments, or the other thing happens. I might change my mind and I might
Mm-hmm.
learn something new. I expand my horizon. So
Mm-hmm.
if, anytime someone disagrees with me, I usually go in interviewing mode.
Well, that's what's smart about it, because now you're being, you're coming at it from a place with no ego too, because you're saying, if I learn something, then I realize I was wrong about something. You know, maybe you do have a point. Maybe I want to learn. Like, none of us want to be in this space to be ignorant to the fact that there's nothing better than Bitcoin. That's it. Don't ever change my mind. But we've done enough research that try to convince me. Like, try to tell me, like, as far as like it does, it shows, like you said, like the knowledge gap somewhere. Like, you keep asking the questions to their argument, and you find who has the gap. You know, it's not because you're trying to prove yourself. You just really want to be curious. Like, do you know something I don't know? You know, but then it solves itself. It's like a self-correcting, argument, way of talking to somebody. It's amazing. I love it.
And another great aspect is of like, if you get your ego out and you are being kind, in 97% of the cases, the other person also lets their ego down and is kind, and lets their guardrails down.
Mm-hmm.
There are obviously psychopaths and assholes
Yeah.
and people that just like have, now I show him.
And it's just almost because then you're just observing that behavior. Then you're just almost like it's almost like, so you're still curious, like watching a nature channel. Like, it's just, you're just interested in, like, why are you? Oh, look how you're behaving. Look how you're overreacting for no reason.
And I do think, coming back to Bitcoin, do think that's very important that we Bitcoiners do that, because I think Bitcoin is very innovatable. Like, Bitcoin is coming anyways. But there are two ways to this hyper Bitcoiners world. The one way is where we basically have a very peaceful revolution and everything is going smooth and everyone is slowly coming on board. The other one is civil war.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we Bitcoiners are very loving and kind and respectful and giving people time to learn the strategies and to learn Bitcoin and just being there as educators, the more we do that, the higher the chance is to not have the civil war route. And I'm curious how you see it with like how we get to that Bitcoin standard, how we can improve our chances of doing a peaceful revolution.
I think that I don't know where I heard this. I don't know if it was a Sailor thing, but I remember it all the time about how when we reach global adoption, it's going to come at a time where the majority of the population doesn't even know that they're using it. So it's going to happen whether they know it or not. Like, let's say, for now that these ETFs exist, and now that these companies are able to hold a percentage of people's 401ks, let's say, in Bitcoin, these people will not even, they could be arguing against Bitcoin, saying they don't like it. Meanwhile, their management company is putting a 1% allocation into Bitcoin, and they're thinking, I'm doing great for retirement, and they don't even know why. Or using it, like, every day people use their credit card. They don't understand the systems behind using their credit card. They just swipe it and pay their bill later. They don't know everything happening in the background, the settlement systems, the different people involved, the percentage. Like, nobody knows what goes on. There's a lot of stuff happening in the background. So with Bitcoin, even though they don't fully understand it, once it becomes more of like a base layer for a new financial system, they'll be using it without even understanding that they're doing it. Because even when you think about, people now are so accustomed to QR codes, I feel like that's getting people used to Bitcoin and used to this new financial system without them understanding that they're even doing it, because that's how you transact wallet to wallet. And now everywhere you go, there's a QR code. At my kids' elementary school, they have a poster outside, scan the QR code. Everything is QR. So, older people have to learn how to use it. Everybody. It's like they're just slowly introducing these new ways to interact with the world that you don't have a choice. You have to do it. And then that's when we're going to reach global adoption. It'll happen without even anyone understanding that it's happening. That's where I think people get that gradually and then suddenly idea, because I just think we're at that point. I really feel like I'm not in the group of people that believe in diminishing returns. I'm in the group of people that believes in gradually, then suddenly. I do believe in a super cycle, hyper Bitcoinization. I believe in all that. So I don't see how it can just be a suddenly thing or a gradual thing. Once all these like dominoes line up, you know, so it's already starting to happen. Like things are starting to tip, and I think it's just gonna, unravel. And I don't think it won't have to be between peaceful. It'll be a revolution, but it doesn't have to be, in a civil war type way or a peaceful way, because I just think most people won't even know. I just think it's just going to be like that. It's just going to be like a silent little revolution going on, trickling through the system.
That's a great way to look at it. I think I'm very much subscribed to that, because it's like the TCP/IP protocol and the internet itself. I met actually in, what was it, 2021 or 2022. I met from my French part of my family and very far related uncle. He was very much against the internet, and he said the same thing that Bitcoin critics say about the internet. And I was like, wow, those people are still around. Like people that say like, oh, the internet is just temporary there, and it will completely go away, and we will go back to where we were like 1972 or like whatever. So it's super interesting to hear those arguments, and I heard them the first time ever from a real person in real life against the internet, which I usually only hear against Bitcoin. Like it was literally like, if you just exchange the word internet with Bitcoin, it would have fitted. And then when you go back to like when internet came popular, the same thing happened. Same thing as, even with electricity. With electricity, the same thing happened. So you're very much right with like it's a base layer technology which just spreads organically, and people don't even know about it. That's genius. I love that.
I think it's the only way. Like I keep trying to wrap my head around how things will play out. And I really wish I remember who said that. Who I feel like it was a Saylor thing, but I feel like somebody, maybe it was Jeff Booth, I don't know, but it was somebody who said that it's just when the majority of the world is using it, it's just going to be something that they just have to use because it's there. It's like it's just so, it's the only way I see it happening. So I just think it's already there. It's already on its way. So we're just kind of witnessing it. And I think this is literally just going to be a crazy year. I really feel this year into next year is going to be wild, and I don't think it'll slow down from that point. I feel like we've been through so much pain, because I really feel like the 2020 cycle was cut short. It was attacked. And I do think that because the people that attacked it or cut it short or manipulated markets in order to kind of bring this economic shift to kind of slow things down until they were involved. Now they are involved. So now things can let it rip, I think, is what's going to happen. So, it's just because they were like jealous sitting on the sidelines. Like they couldn't get in on it, and it's just wild. It's so crazy. And then just hearing even about the whole silent aspect, like how you don't hear much about it. It's always on the back of people's minds why Elon doesn't really mention Bitcoin. And it kind of nags at us a little bit too, because we know how pro, Bitcoin, like Tesla owns Bitcoin. They haven't sold it. I get why he doesn't mention it. But some people think, oh, he has enough fiat. Why would he care about Bitcoin? And they just kind of smack talk him that way. I believe he really truly does understand technologies, and he's a smart human being. And he knows that when he talks too much about something, it brings a level of hatred to something that he likes, because if, let's say, the richest person in the world starts talking about Bitcoin, why it's so great, because Tesla owns some and he owns some, it's only going to bring people back saying, well, you just want to make yourself richer. You're just greedy, you know? So I feel like him mentioning it isn't going to do Bitcoin any good. He knows, I think, what Bitcoin is, and he knows that it's going to do what it's going to do regardless of him saying something or not. So I do truly believe he loves it. He wants to see it succeed. He's all about freedom and, transparency, and what he's doing with the government is amazing. It's like my fun time every day watching this play out too, watching all the fraud get exposed. But I do believe that he loves Bitcoin, and I think that he just doesn't want to hurt. Not that you can hurt it really anyway, but what's the point of him trying to talk good about it so they could just say he's greedy?
He's it's so funny because I was actually asked today on a podcast where I was guest on, who would you like to interview who's still living? And I said Elon Musk because I told him I would like to interview him because I think he's more of a Bitcoiner than we realize. I think Tesla is still the only company in the S&P 500 that owns Bitcoin. People keep forgetting that Tesla owns Bitcoin. Still, I think almost 10,000 Bitcoin. That's not nothing. Yes, Tesla could own way more. If they make a strategy with Tesla, they own a lot of Bitcoin. But first of all, I'm against institutions and companies owning Bitcoin. So I always like if they take it slow. I like when regular people have more chance and longer time to accumulate Bitcoin. But he's a true, he understands Austrian economics. He retweets Austrian economics. He talked with Mile about it. And I think he understands Bitcoin better than we think. And I think it's just not something, that he pays attention too much right now. I think there's so much with his rockets and Tesla, and now he's fighting governments. And he's not only doing that in America, he's now also doing it in Europe, with Germany elections and probably other elections too. So he's just very busy on so many levels. Like, I don't know.
I agree with that. I have one other take on that a little bit because, I think he's got a million projects. Who knows even how he does this? I mean, this is just insane. Like, I don't know. He manages it all. Like, it's just ridiculous. But especially the government aspect, like fighting the government now, that's like the big, like, how do you have time to do anything else? But the thing that I think is, like, if Elon, I feel like this is just me, my ideas, but when he decided to buy Twitter, I feel like he was mad enough at not only censorship, but it was almost like even when he was promoting Doge, he was on SNL during that bull run, Dogecoin to the moon, like promoting it and talking about Doge all the time. And, I feel like once the government attacked, or the SEC kept attacking crypto in general, not just Bitcoin, just crypto, the whole space, there was a war on crypto, choke point 2.0, all this stuff was going on. I think it made Elon look like a fool, and maybe he was just mad enough about, like, hey, you made me look stupid, like I shilled this coin or whatever, told people, and then now you're attacking me saying because he promoted it. He was being sued by the SEC, I think, and stuff like that, because of promoting Dogecoin and this and that. So it's like he wasn't doing it to try to harm people. I think he really thought that we were at some point in 2020 that this market was going to become like, this is the new financial, like crypto is the way type of thing. So I just think that maybe like he got pissed off enough that he's like, you know what, these people totally attacked not just the entire industry, because he was all about like Bitcoin Twitter, and he was talking about it, So I think for him to be made to look like a fool is enough of a reason for somebody to turn around and say, you know what, I'm gonna stop this. So
it's also interesting how he gets involved in things that piss him off a little bit, like the government thing. I think he's now getting into government not because he wants to influence things. Not, like that's not the sole purpose. It's the purpose of like he was mad at the administration from Biden, and he was like, they didn't invite me to the EV thing, even though they are most American cars. And and Biden was driving with Ford electric, and Tesla is clearly the leader in EV.
Yes.
Like the numbers just don't support that at all. So like, and he was really mad, and that's why I think he really had decided to go all in on the government thing. I think if the administration in Biden was very friendly to him and was not attacking him, I think he probably would have not done it. One thing, in the time Tesla adopted Bitcoin, I remember on the conference calls, because back then I was still 50-50 Bitcoin and Tesla holding. And Tesla, and he said something really interesting. He said, in Germany, you have to pay a negative interest rates if you hold money on the bank account. And he's like, I will never give Germany that money. I will just buy Bitcoin with that. He literally said that on a conference call when they adopted Bitcoin. So for him, I think he has to see a clear problem that he cares enough about. And maybe there's like one valid point of people saying like, oh, like he's benefiting from a fiat system. Maybe the different perspective is like the fiat system is not pissing him off enough because he has like he has no problem with spending fiat. Like he has bank accounts, he has unlimited resources to venture capital, to credit, to banks, to all of that, and he's not subject to like any like bans or anything like that. So if banks would have started to kick him out or like ban Tesla or like do anything like that, I think he might actually go more haywire on Bitcoin. But it's just guessing from my side what's in his mind from at that point. But I watched him a lot in the past years. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's what is. That's what is.
Yeah. So I mean, I just think that he when you said he's mad enough, when he gets mad enough about something, when he sees a clear problem. And I think that one clear problem he sees is the over regulation of the government, being that, now they're attacking him from the SEC. He was getting attacked constantly for buying Twitter, or even wanting to buy Twitter in the first place, but just, I think not giving him, the contracts. And then even he was saying something about even like lawsuits, like something about hiring workers, but then he had to do it or he would get fined. But then if he didn't, but then he's not supposed to, because the workers have to be of a certain type of, background as far as like how much they know about what they're doing, because it's a safety issue. So then there's contradicting laws on what he's supposed to do for SpaceX, let's say. So he's pissed off because he goes, you have these two dumb, government organizations that one's telling me to do one thing, one's the other, and either way I'm going to get sued. So it's like there's just too much government overlap and nobody knows what's going on. There's too many rules and no one knows what the actual rules are. He's sick of getting attacked. And another thing is too, then he's got a lot of fiat money, right? He pays the highest fiat taxes for anyone in the world, right? And then when you find out the type of government waste that's been happening, you figure not only why do we pay taxes, but why does he pay taxes? It's like this money that he's just, and they keep wanting him to pay more. People are saying, well, you're the richest man in the world. Why shouldn't you pay even more taxes to help the world? Well, he would if it was going to a good place, but it's getting spent and stolen left and right. So he has a point, so I feel like I'm on his side with that too. So I feel like there's many reasons, but I feel like all of this is leading toward a better future of less government control and more decentralization, which is a Bitcoin, future. I just think either way, it's just headed in that direction. So it's good for Bitcoin anyway.
Yeah, like I was just Googling the number. In 2022, his tax bill was $11 billion. And it's like how many people have you have to work for how long? How long has the average worker to work to contribute that many tax dollars to the
Hmm.
system? It's just incredible. And like, oh, I get so mad at people when they say like, oh, the rich don't pay tax. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
The rich pay all the tax. They pay
Yeah.
80%. They might not pay the same percentage. Maybe they
Yeah.
have a lower percentage of that, but the lower percentage what they pay is a majority of the overall income. And that's what the socialists don't get of like, if you make bad laws so the socialists get out of your country, you don't have income. There's a
Yeah.
point, if you reach that point of tax rates and go higher, your tax income actually decreases because people are leaving or
Yeah.
cheating.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think it's just enough is enough, because it's like the cure for this situation isn't to tax the rich more to spread the wealth, because just if you tax the rich more, it'll just have more money that can be stolen. It's not gonna help the people that need it. I think that's what their misconception is. They think that they're fighting for something that is a lie. So it's like, open your eyes. I just think that people need to start to wake up, and the more that some of these agencies get audited too, people will realize how much our government has been. I mean, there's some good that happens. There's some good money spent on good things, but there's just way too much theft and no accountability for these people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great way to look at it.
Mhm.
You mentioned before Bitcoin at 1% adoption. We're still at 1%, something like that. I remember. What are you looking at in terms of adoption? Because there's a lot of different numbers out there. People say like, oh, like we are not at 1%. Oh, people say like we're at 7%. It's kind of confusing for me of like, what even,
I think
how
it's
even look at
hard.
that?
I think it's probably, I mean, I don't know. I think I might have heard 3%. I don't know if I heard 7, but I might have heard 3. But again, it is very hard to really know, because how many people have multiple Bitcoin wallets? So if you have 3% of the population that you think there's this many Bitcoin wallets, that percentage of the population, but some people have 10 wallets, some people have 3, so how much is it? Way less than we think, percent of
Oh,
the
oh,
population?
yeah, also like there are wallets out there where there are multiple people on that wallet because it's an exchange, for example,
Mhm.
and they maybe have 10 million users, but not 10 million addresses.
Mhm.
They might have like, I don't know,
True. Yeah.
100,000 addresses or like a million addresses.
Mhm.
So there's a
So
lot
that's
of
the
variables on
opposite.
that.
So instead of it being like one person having multiple wallets, now you have institutions having less wallets for a ton of people. So yeah, so that's really hard to gauge from
And
both
which one
sides.
is stronger? It's like impossible to know that, right? That's why I'm
Yeah.
always wondering how to figure out. Also, another point is like, what is one person adopted Bitcoin mean? Like, does he has to have like 1% of his wealth in Bitcoin? Is that a Bitcoiner? Is that a person that's called, or does he has to have like 50% of his wealth in Bitcoin?
Well,
It's get very
yeah.
complicated.
I think so. I would say it is, because when people say that whole you only need like zero point zero 0.01 Bitcoin and you'll be good, kind of thing, like in the future based on how much the price will go up over the years. So I think anybody who does have that and just holds it, even if they have $100, they just let it sit there for 15 years, they'll be happy they did that. Um, so if everybody out today went and bought $100 worth of Bitcoin, you know what I mean? That would be depleting, supply exchanges, whatever they have in reserves. So I think that, yeah, I think that any allocation to it would count. But there's so many people that they buy it and then they sell it and they have a wallet open and now they don't own the Bitcoin anymore because they sold it, So it's like there's a lot of those people too. But I definitely think that, if you understand it, once you understand it, you don't have 1% of your net worth or 2% of your net worth in it. I think you take whatever you would be able to have as savings, and you just fully put it in there to like store. I think it's a million times better than having it in the stock market. or a CD or anything like that. So I think, yeah, once people understand it, they just convert, whatever they don't need to spend.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like once you get into that rabbit hole, like you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. You it's just a one-way ticket to going all in Bitcoin, which is a fascinating thought, and I hope. I do hope we have more Bitcoin adoption that is better and better with preventing mistakes. And I do think people that come in 2024 have a major advantage in preventing mistakes and having a quicker orange billing story, going quicker, preventing in mistakes of custody than people in 2020 and then people in 2017 and people in 2013 and stuff like that. So I do see that. What are you kind of expecting for this cycle to happen? You already mentioned a little bit of like you don't think it's slowing down. You're thinking of like Bitcoin returns are getting bigger, not diminishing and stuff like that.
Yeah. So you think as far as like price?
Oh, wherever you want to take it, like prices. I think the end signal of that, but there's like a lot of things that. I think price is just a consequence of things, and the other things are kind of the fundamental ones.
Yeah, I think that there's just going to be, I'm still thinking the strategic reserve is about to happen. Even hearing from the crypto czar, what's his name, David Sachs, I think. Even hearing from him and talking about how there's going to be, he briefly mentioning it again, another one of those situations where they're super quiet about it and they don't talk about it too much. But it was like right at the end of the interview, it was, the reporter asked about the Bitcoin reserve, and he did say that, Bitcoin strategic reserve, he mentioned that, so it wasn't a crypto reserve, it was Bitcoin only. So I think that that's going to be coming soon once they educate the people in the government that need to kind of just go through and just all vote for this thing. Which is that's the hurdle that they have to jump. They have to, the education is a big part of it. So again, there's so many people that would say no initially because they don't know it or don't understand what it is. But once they find out and have actual information, they would 100% say yes, this is a good idea. So I think that's going to be happening. There's also that the FASB accounting rule. That's why another reason why GameStop, I think, is finally had that meeting with Seyr, and a lot of other companies would follow suit. Banks, I guess banks are now able to custody it in the US. So, and this is all just US news. The rest of the world is already, nation states here and like everywhere that you hear, they're all putting up their own strategic Bitcoin reserve bill, to start buying Bitcoin too. So, El Salvador is a case where they've been doing it for how long, and they've shown that they're doing very well from converting their country to a Bitcoin standard, So I just see that there's just only good things. Like I feel like, sorry, I thought I had this on Do Not Disturb. Yeah, I just think that this year is going to be super interesting. I think that I find it hard to believe that Bitcoin wouldn't hit $1 million this year. Like I feel like it would just happen somehow super fast. Like I feel like we would just, and I think most people still would just not care. We'll care. We'll be very happy. The governments and everybody else I think will be very happy. But I think once it hits 200,000, those same people still won't care because they'll think, well, I didn't get any of it. It's too late still. Or when it hits 1 million, they'll still say, oh, well, I didn't get any of that. It's going to tank down to 500,000. You're crazy for holding it still. It's going to be the same story over and over again, just on repeat, and then even Seyr says anything you don't buy now will cost you $13 million. I don't know, in the next 20 years or something, he says. So it's just like people will still continue to just think, well, you better get those puts. You better, just sell it before you lose all your money and stuff. People will just not understand the fact that it's a fixed asset and that, there's all this buying pressure globally. So I think it would be, I would be surprised if it weren't to hit 1 million this year or early next year. I think.
That's like, I think that would be amazing to see in 1 year the 100K and then a million the next one. I think it's possible, and then seeing the reactions of the people, that would be just absolutely so funny. And I would love that, because that gives a lot of great talking points on the podcast and a lot of great interesting conversations around that. But yeah, like that would be just absolutely absurd. I would love that, but I kind of am more bearish on this year. Like, I think everything is possible, but I do think we're not crossing the 500,000. But like 1 million would be that would be crazy.
I think 500,000. It's like, okay, it's still. But I think that when they say, the only reason I really think it is because Bitcoin does what you least expect. Just like how we thought once it hit 100,000, we thought, oh, now price discovery is going to go crazy, 250 from here. And it didn't. It's just hanging out right now. But I think that it's going to shock people. Like right now, it's shocking us with how is it not going up faster? Why is it sitting around at this price for so long? And I think people, like, maybe part of it too is to try to, like, with all this big money playing these fiat games, to make us so bored of the price action, so that when it does hit 250 or 3, we're like, oh, finally got there. This is probably it. Like, we've waited for so long and it's just been boring, so they think we're going to sell off some of it, or just, try to, like, do the whole trading thing. And then it'll just continue going, and we'll be, caught off sides ourselves. So I think that it's just maybe to get us to think, oh, thank God for this amount. We need this so bad. The economy's so bad. Everything's been so rough. My family's struggling. We need to sell at some point. We've held out, and now it's time. Because I think it's just, like, I don't know, trying to make it boring enough for us to be appreciating 250 or 3, to think that we should sell for some profit.
Absolutely. What were your first thoughts when you heard about Trump on the Bitcoin conference and Trump being elected, and then he's talking about strategic Bitcoin reserve?
So I was just again a little skeptical, because I just feel like he did the NFT thing for so long and all that stuff, and I was just not sure what he was fully planning to do. I just thought it was really good that a voice, like a large a voice with a lot of following, was going to the Bitcoin conference and speaking about it. I thought that was good for Bitcoin, because I'm like, okay, people that are Trump supporters will maybe hear it. But I just think that so many people that, I mean, in real life, I know a lot of people that are Trump supporters that they know they know everything about him. They know everything that happens, but they don't know that he went to the Bitcoin conference. Like, I don't think any of the people, like, because a lot of like people that I know from my work, and just there's a huge Trump, Republican, I don't know, just support. And I just don't hear anybody say, oh, did you hear he was at that Bitcoin thing? I'm going to go buy some Bitcoin. Nobody ever says that. So I just think it's like, we know it. Anyone who supports Trump that's also a Bitcoiner knows it. But I don't think the majority of people really, it didn't take hold in their minds. But then I was happy when, he won, because I was on the fence about him for a long time. But then I just feel like I get sick of the theft, the government, the economy's just been terrible. And when you had somebody who was going to back him, like Elon, who wants to get rid of theft and waste, I thought that was amazing. Plus, hearing about the strategic reserve, of course, that's something that the US should do. Do you not want to get left behind? Other countries are adopting it. We need to do it. There's no other choice. And then you heard crickets from the opposite end, so it was just really confusing. I just didn't understand. So yeah, I think it'll be overall good. I think it's just going to be, I think the House and the Senate have primarily Bitcoin positive, members. So I think that's going to be really good also.
I love that America is again steamrolling ahead, and I think EU is kind of two and a half years, maybe 3 years behind. I see that. I see slowly some conversations happening. Like Czech is only one part of it, but also like Germany, there are some party leaders that are now going on Bitcoin podcasts that have a significant chance of like being elected in the parliament and stuff like that. So there's things happening, and also I think because you mentioned the Trump rally, the Trump going to the Bitcoin conference, we are the only one seeing that. That's 100% true. But I think it's mostly because he went to so many rallies, like so many conferences. It's kind of astonishing for me that at his age, he's so fit. I want to be that fit in his age. Like that's like, wow. I don't know if he does it naturally or he uses something. I don't know. But he definitely has a lot of power and a lot of fitness for his age for going to all those rallies, because he was at like 10 hours before the Bitcoin conference somewhere, then like 8 hours after the Bitcoin conference somewhere. Like, where does he sleep? Like, where does he fit that in? That's super interesting.
I
Also
think
to see.
about that too. Yeah, I just think that there's like we look at that and we think, wow, I couldn't do that, So it's like just wild how much he's traveling and going to everything and able to speak and have the energy to speak on all these different places. It's just kind of wild.
Absolutely. Really cool. One more thing that I want to get into the podcast is I saw you have a Twitter community, an X community called the Paranoid Bitcoin Anarchist. I love that name. How did this come together?
Oh God, it's amazing. I'm so happy with it. It's been since probably December. It started off with, I remember seeing the Bitcoin Therapist's account tweet something about getting monetized. So he's like, if we all just get monetized, we'll buy more Bitcoin. We'll just use that money to just keep stacking. So I thought, wow, that's a great idea. I haven't really ever tried that hard. Like, I was posting all the time, but I never knew how to get any engagement. Like, I had zero, like nobody would ever see my posts. But after I saw that, I was inspired. So I created, I think, one post about following more female Bitcoiners, because I'm like, there's so many other women out there that just probably, I just don't know. I know a few of like large accounts, like I know like a good amount, but not like that many compared to the amount of men in the space. So I just put up a post and all these women started commenting and men started sharing it. And it was a pretty cool moment. And that just inspired me to create, like, all these people started interacting with me. So then I felt like it was actually like my account was getting seen, and the people that I was interacting with were really interesting people. I would look at their stuff and they just had such great ideas, and it made me realize that, yeah, the bigger accounts, they're so smart, and I've learned so much from them over the years, but there's so many people that don't have a huge following that have such unique perspectives. And I love always learning and just seeing what everyone has to say. So I truly found everyone fascinating. It's not like I'm just trying to do it just to build my account. I'm actually like interested in what people are thinking. So that's what I think it is. It's like part of it is if you show people that, you care about their stuff, then they kind of, they want to check up on you too. It's like you build these like friendships. So I started doing that with a lot of the people that would interact with me, and I would just look at everybody and try to find interesting people. It was so many to sift through, and I was finding awesome stuff. So the more I interacted, they did too. And then I decided to create this community because it was just easier. I saw that everyone else had communities. I thought, why not try it? So the name, all I thought about was with how Seyr mentioned one day about paranoid crypto anarchists. So then I just made ours Bitcoin anarchists. And it was just the first thing that came to mind. And I just put it in there. I thought it was a temporary name until we actually picked something together. But then I just started inviting all these people, and it's just been, really, really amazing. And they just, they didn't want to change the name. They loved it. They were like, no, we're keeping it. It's awesome. It actually like embodies a lot of how we feel. We're all a little bit paranoid. That's why we got into Bitcoin in the first place, being a little skeptical about the system and what they're doing. And And then I don't know, so many cool people. Like the other day, Walker America joined our group, and then Carla just joined our group, and I just feel like it's really surreal. It's just so cool to have people that I've admired and looked up to joining our group. It's amazing. So, and everyone's super hyped about it, and it feels like a big family. So,
I love that. That's great. That's really cool. And it's actually kind of also nicely playing with that podcast, because that's one big mission that I now have because of the podcast, giving a stage to people that have never been on a podcast before. I think I have the highest rate of guests on that have never been on any podcast, and they're the first time appearing on mine, or maybe they only have been on like one or two, because there are some speakers that are like on every week on some podcast. It feels like, and they're taking it around. So I think that's a great thing to do. And also the group and the community thing is something very, very important to have in Bitcoin, no matter where, but this belonging in this group thing and this community thing, it's something very important to have inside the Bitcoin community. So I think it's great what you're doing there. I think that will have a lot of great and positive resonations with that. Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, no, people are just super. It's so sweet hearing people say like they felt like they were just walking alone in the world. And it's like now you have like people that hear you and see you, and so you don't feel so alone, even though it's just online, you know? So it's just, you actually can like make a difference for people when you actually tell them you appreciate something, you know, instead of just seeing it lurking in the background and, you know, thinking something's a great idea, but just not actually commenting on it. It's like, tell them, let them know, because they can really make a difference in their day and their life. And, to know that somebody actually cares or heard them, you know, so it's amazing. And I thank you for having me on your show, because I've seen so many of your podcasts, and, you know, I look up to you and you're amazing. And just, I was really nervous being on here today too, because I've only done one other, and, she made me feel super comfortable. And, the reason I even did hers was because starting this group, once she reached out and asked me to do it, I was terrified. Again, I'm not a finance person. I'm not somebody who's, you know, well known in the space at all. Nobody knows me, but I just feel like when she asked me, I was like, I should do this, because, you know, it would give other people inspiration to speak, because there's so many people that have something to say. You don't have to be in finance. You could just have an opinion or a viewpoint or some interesting angle at how you see things going. And everyone, when you know enough about a subject, you can talk. Like, I think people just think that, you know, you need to be a good speaker, or you can't, you know, you're shy. But when you know about something and you're passionate about something, like most people are so passionate about Bitcoin, you can talk about it because you care so much about it. So it's like, don't be afraid. I wanted to not only show myself that I wasn't afraid, but I wanted to show them that, you know, because I did it, like they can be a little more brave too, you know? And that's why even with yours too, I was like, you know, I feel like I'm nervous, you know, but it's gone great. You know, you've made me feel super comfortable, and I really appreciate it. And it's awesome to have a platform, and to know that you've had people like Seyr on your show, and you want to have somebody like Elon, which I think is possible and amazing. You know, it's just crazy to think that you're so open-minded about just hearing everyone's perspective. I love that. So it's not just big accounts. It's not just well-known people. It's like, let people speak, and you get a more real view of the world that way. You know, it's not like not to say it's an echo chamber, but when you hear the same, like you said, the same podcast or person speaking 2-3 times a week, it's like like how much more unique perspective can you have from like one person, you know? So it's nice to spread it around.
I see that one speaker, they're only rare. Most speakers have 1, 2, 3 different things they want to talk about, but it's very one unique perspective. There are only rare instances like a Seyr. They can talk about the same thing 100 times, and it's every time interesting.
Yes.
Because they have so many different ways of getting to the same point. But you have to be so freaking good as a speaker to do that. And you have to have so much information and experience and stuff like that in there. So having a podcast which exists of the same people all over again is getting boring after a while. I think that's why what Bitcoin did is kind of great. What they are doing now with Mr. Obnoxious, because he's now venturing into new conversations with new people. I don't know if he needed to do the name change for that, but it's great that he ventures out and tries to get to other people, because that's the only way we grow. And for me, from the beginning, I didn't knew where the podcast was going, but once I started it, and once I had just people on that I knew from conferences or knew from Twitter, and they never had been on a podcast, I saw not only how popular that was, but also how enriching that was from my perspective. Because of course I can invite Jeff Proof 4 times a year, but what is the benefit of doing so? Like obviously once a year, and maybe that's a great rhythm to get a fresh perspective. And he's also a great thinker of like, he gets a new thing. But like, do we need those great people like literally every other week? I don't think there's a big value in that. So what I'm trying to do is now getting great big speakers also on, because they give a bigger stage also to the people that have never been on a podcast before. And this allows me to build a stage where as the most amount of different perspectives ever created in Bitcoin come together. And maybe, just maybe, if I do it long enough, on any platform, on any podcast. And how amazing would that be if this podcast is the only one that is doing daily interviews with 365 guests per year, doing that for 10, 20, 40 years, having the biggest variety of interviews for human beings on Earth on any topic, because I didn't find anyone doing the same thing. And if that thing would have started with Bitcoin, like as it did with that, I think it would be amazing if I can do that story. That's why I'm so passionate about keeping that Bitcoin podcast going, doing it daily, doing with so many different people as possible, and also venturing out. I have now 2 UFC fight on. I will have the 3rd UFC fight on, and I will venture out. And right now I only want to have Bitcoiners on, because I think that's the bottom line of the podcast. But I have Bitcoiners on that have Bitcoin, but we talk about something else, like parenting or like UFC or like sports. And I think that's how I hopefully, sorry to go on a tangent, but
no, I love
hopefully I get like a really big library of great people and perspectives, so we can all learn from each other. And that I'm really passionate about that, even though this was not the intention of the podcast when I started it, but it involved in that.
I think that that's amazing. And I think that you are doing a great thing, because you never know who you'll reach, and you never know what moment it's going to be for that person that it clicks for them. Like it might be you saying something specific. It might be that person that has never been on a podcast before that says something to the right person at the right time that just all of a sudden now they get it. Like there's a moment for everybody. And I just think that the more variety you have, that there's more chances to ignite that, or to like spark something in more people. And for yourself, like you said, it enriches you too, because you want to do this so that you could learn, and keep it exciting. You know, you're excited when you hear different thoughts and ideas. You engage with those new thoughts and ideas, and you want to challenge your own beliefs and just kind of like grow, you know. So I think that's amazing. You should even look into how you said you have UFC fighters. I've heard a lot of, oh man, this would be crazy, but I've heard that like some football players and NBA players are Bitcoiners. It'd be cool to get some of those athletes on on
But
your
that would
show.
be amazing. I have to look into that if I can reach out to some.
That'd be crazy. I even know that my husband shared it with me, but I thought it was so cool. I've always loved Yanni Satetakumbo from the Milwaukee Bucks, but he shared a picture with me of his teammate Damian Lillard wearing a Satoshi like sweater, like 2 different days. I'm like, he's a Satoshi fan. That's amazing. So it's like it'd be so cool to get again some of these athletes that they've never probably ever been asked to be on something, and maybe because they are Bitcoiners, any of these athletes normally maybe they wouldn't want to do a different type of interview because they're busy. But when it comes to something you're passionate about too, why wouldn't you want to talk about it? Have someone be interested in your hobby that nobody else cares about when it's, because nobody else, it does feel like you're alone. It feels like even for you having me on here or for my, Twitter community, like it just makes you feel like I do have this interest that nobody else around knows about, or because you feel so lonely in real life. To be able to talk about it is just something that is a gift for people. So I think that it would probably be just like a cool addition, to add not just the regular people, but maybe some athletes or something, since you're already doing UFC guys.
Yeah, I try to venture out in as many regions as possible. And the great thing is, in every aspect of life, there are Bitcoiners. That's the advantage with that. Yeah, really cool. I have one question that I asked each and every one of my guests, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Oh, what can you learn from me besides Bitcoin? I am a wife. I'm a mother. I have 3 kids. I have a 13-year-old, a 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And I got into Bitcoin because of them. So yeah, I'm again bringing it back to Bitcoin, but it's like I did get into it because of them, my family. But they mean more to me than anything, and that's why you have to go out and search for answers. You have to find what's the best way for them. But yeah, I have my 3 kids, and watching them grow is just the best. I love being a mom, and I love being a wife, and my husband is amazing. He's so supportive, and he actually, my husband made this shirt for me. So this is my favorite quote: "Don't borrow from the future, buy the future." So he made this hoodie
I
for
love
me.
that.
Isn't
Wow.
that cool? So yeah, so I just he has like a little hobby, like making little designs, but he made this for me so I could wear it because people liked it when I put it on my page. And Paul Iverson, that had me on last time, she mentioned that quote, and when people heard the podcast, they loved it. So he made me a hoodie.
That's great.
So,
I
yeah.
love that a lot. Really cool. Perfect. We have an end routine in the podcast, as you might know, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you a very hard question. If Bitcoin didn't exist, but you could only buy one asset for the next 20 years, what would it be?
Jeez. If Bitcoin didn't exist, I guess it would be, I don't know, I think it would have to be, I don't want to say any of these things because all I think is Bitcoin, but I would say gold or real estate.
It seems to be the safest bet for 20 years ago. I probably gold because it's more saleable and divisible and stuff like that than real estate and transferable. But yeah, like I would probably also go with gold. It seems to be, even though I wasn't a gold guy before Bitcoin.
Yeah, even though it's definitely dwarfed by Bitcoin, but I just think even real estate, it's a hard one because you pay property taxes every year, and then you have to pay for maintenance on this place. So how much, is it really worth it over the years? But I think based on the amount of, dollars that are created into the world over the years, I think 20 years time would give you a decent, for a property to have gone up in value. Not in value. I always tell, when people talk about houses too, I tell them it doesn't go up in value. It's just, you need more dollars to buy a house because dollars are worthless. So worthless. So
yeah, absolutely. It's like people buy houses and stocks and think the value goes up, and then they don't realize they actually are falling down a cliff, and they see the houses just go up because the price is going up. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, really cool. I enjoyed it a lot having you on, Staci.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
You can find me on X. You can find me in the Paranoid Bitcoin Anarchist group. My handle is xstacy, but the I is a 1. So you guys can find me on there. I'm always on. I'm always checking on people, and join our group.
Thank you so much, Staci,
Thank
for
you.
being on. It was really cool. Thank you so much also for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.